In this video, I'm going to show you how to take a sports card that's worth this and turn it into this. And the way it is done is through something called grading. So let's dive in. What is grading a sports card? So it's exactly how it sounds. Grading a sports card is you literally take a card and send it into a company, and they base it on its condition. They give it a grade. The grade could be a 6, a 7, an 8, a 9, or a 10. Usually a 10 is the best grade. Now, how do you grade a sports card? How much money can you make doing it? What do these companies look for? I'm going to explain. So what these companies look for is there's 4 pieces of criteria that go into grading a sports card. Corners, edges, centering, surface, and autograph. For some companies, that's a 5th. Now, it sounds silly, but the littlest minute detail of a card, just a little whiting on a corner, can mean the difference of a card selling for $500 or $2,000. It's literally insane. And the grading companies that people generally use are PSA and Beckett. Now, back in the day, about 4 or 5 years ago, they used to be neck and neck, but now a PSA 10 sells for a lot more than a BGS 9.5. Those are the grades you want to aim for when sending in a card for grading. But let's dive into my computer, and I want to show you exactly what to look for when grading a sports card, so hopefully you can do it yourself and double or triple your money. Let's get into it. All right, so let's get into it. So these are the 4 pieces of criteria. If I were you, I would write these down that the grading companies look for. And I'm going to take you one by one and show you what a bad corner or a bad edge, bad centering, and bad surface looks like. Okay, so let's dive into it. So this is a card of Gleyber Torres. Now, this is a card from 2015. And if you look at the back here, you could see it's very small, but it matters. This little whiting on the edge. This is what a bad edge looks like. Now, if you think about it, when a card is colored like this, when it's colored on the back how it's blue, it's easier to chip, right? If this card was all white, like this, for example, a card like this Joe Burrow, if it chips on the back, you can't really see it because the whole thing's white. But because this card is colored, it makes it harder to grade because chipping is very noticeable. All right, so that's what a bad edge looks like. Now, this is another card I pulled up from eBay, and check this out. So the centering on this card is no good. If you look at the borders here, the way to look is you look at the left and right borders and the top and bottom borders, and you want them to be about equal. But if you look here, this left border and this right border, they look good. They're about the same size. However, this top border and this bottom border are different, right? You can see this top is bigger than the bottom, and this will cause the card to not grade well, and this is part of the reason why it graded an 8.5. And something so small and subtle like this can mean a massive difference. If this card was centered, it would grade potentially a 10, and this specific card not graded a 10 is probably worth about $400 to $500. Graded a 10, it's worth about $1,300 to $1,800 in that range. So it makes a massive difference, okay? And if you look at the back here, look at the corners. So if you look right here, you can see whiting on that corner. This will cause the card not to grade well. And because of the whiting on this corner and the centering not being good, this is why this card graded an 8.5. Okay, it's so subtle, but it means such a difference. And going back to what I said before, corners, if they're colored like this, you can see this corner's black, right? The color of this card is black. If it chips, it's a lot easier, and it's a lot easier to see. And these cards get chipped easily because they're not protected when they're in these packages, and people open them up, they're aggressive, they don't know how to handle a card, and they get damaged, like this one. And if you go back to a card like this Joe Burrow I was talking about, these cards are easier to grade if they're all white because you can't see chipping. When you're grading and you're looking at corners of a card, you want to make sure it's a sharp right angle, okay? And this card is. You can see it's got a nice 90-degree sharp angle. If you see this corner being rounded, it's also another cause for concern, and it'll probably cause the card not to grade well. So that's corners, edges, and centering. And the hardest subgrade to see, or the hardest one to see online when you're looking, is surface. Surface is very difficult to see if it's bad or good. Even me, I get tripped up on this sometimes. Sometimes I'll buy a card that I think is good, and I'll see it in person, and then the centering or the surface is no good. But check this out. I found this card of Cade Cunningham. So cards like this that are shiny have bigger problems with surface, because if a card is shiny, it's easier to have a defect in the surface, right? Just one tiny little scratch gets illuminated because the card is shiny, as opposed to, once again, going back to this Joe Burrow card, not shiny, okay? This is the best way I could explain it. And if you look at the back here, do you see right here, 1, 2, 3, these scratches? This card will never, ever grade a 10. Ever, 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 because of these surface issues. And surface issues are hard to see. But when buying a card like this, you just have to know, okay, it's foily, it's shiny. There's a high chance this card may not have a good surface grade. And another thing to look for is sometimes these cards will have little dimples in them, these little things. So these are the 4 pieces of criteria you need to look for when grading a sports card. And if it all checks out, then the card has a high chance to grade a 10. And a 10 is what you want to aim for. And let's talk about the math and the money behind it. So let's hop back to the camera here. So hopefully what I said there made sense. But now let's talk about the math behind grading sports cards and why I think it is the best business in the world to start making quick, efficient cash, okay? So grading sports cards goes like this. Let's say you buy a card for $500. If the card grades a 10, usually it'll about 2.5 to 3 times. And I'm talking about a 10 at the grading company PSA. I'm not talking about Beckett. So it'll go up about 2.5 to 3 times. Now if the card grades a 9, usually you'll about break even and lose money on the grading cost. So what do I mean by grading cost? It costs money to get these cards graded, anywhere from $20 to $50 to $80 to $100. The quicker you want the card back, the more money you have to spend to get a card graded. But think about what I just said for a second. This is why grading sports cards is the greatest thing on planet Earth. You can buy a card for $500, and if the card does not grade well, you'll about break even, maybe lose a little bit of money, $30, $50, $80 in that range. But if the card grades a 10, you're going to double to triple your money, okay? And if you're good at grading sports cards, you understand what I'm talking about here, how to look at the corners, the edges, the centering, the surface. There's a little bit more that goes into it, knowing at what time in the season to be buying certain cards, what types of cards grade well. But once you get that down, it's like flipping a coin, and if the coin lands on heads, you double to triple your money, and if it lands on tails, you lose a tiny bit and you move on. If you keep flipping that coin over and over again, you are going to make a lot of money. And I'm trying to make it easy, sound a little bit easier than it actually is. I wouldn't go spend all your money doing this. I would probably do it with smaller cards to start out with, $100, $50, $75 cards like that, if I was to grade sports cards. But that is the math behind it. And the last thing I'll say about grading sports cards is it is a subjective process done by humans. So someone that grades your sports card is a person. Just like you, just like me, person. And sometimes these people have bad days and these people have good days. And sometimes you'll send a card in for grading and you're so sure this card is going to grade a 10. You bet $10,000 on it and it grades a 9. And you look at it and you're like, oh my God, I don't know why this card graded a 9. And sometimes you'll send in 5 cards and you're not sure these cards are in good condition. The corners are kind of and they all grade a 10. Okay? These graders have emotions and feelings, and sometimes they have bad days and sometimes they have good days. Sometimes they overlook things and make mistakes. I can have a video showing you tons of cards that should have graded a 9 or an 8 that graded a 10. But keep in mind, there's human error involved in grading sports cards, which I personally love. I love the fact of this card may not be great, but it could grade a 10 and I could make a lot of money. So that is how grading sports cards works in a nutshell. I will definitely have more videos on it because there's an intricate thing and there's a lot that goes into grading sports cards and making money with sports cards. But this is the #1 way to make money. If you have $100, $200, $500 to play with, this is what I would do. This is how I got started, and this helped me succeed and make a decent amount of money. But hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Like, comment, subscribe for more videos like this. I'm always trying to drop as much detailed content as I possibly could, giving you guys as much value as humanly possible. I'll see you guys in the next video.